And welcome to the Storycraft Cafe. I'm your host, Hank Garner. And today with me is Alex Newton. Alex is one of those people that I have discovered in my own writing journey um, that is offering a service that is mind blowing, if you will. Yeah, Alex, I discovered right to market several years ago when Chris Fox was talking about it, and he had a video where he showed you how to do research in your genre by digging into Amazon and the many layers of harvesting information. And about 4 minutes in, my eyes glassed over, and I thought, well, this is great that Chris has figured this out. And I just, squirrel. I just couldn't hang in there. And then I discovered that you had created a tool that does all this heavy lifting for you. And on your website, K-Lytics, um, you say, what if you knew exactly which genres sell? Right to market is no rocket science if you know the market. Save yourself months of research and focus on your writing. And I'll tell you what, that grabbed my attention because
Oh,
I'm a
wow.
writer, and the business side to me is a struggle. And you've created a tool that simplifies a lot of that struggle. So welcome to the show, first off.
Well, thank you very much for the invite. Thank you for having me. And hello to all those creative people out there. Hello, authors.
Yeah. So Alex, what first off, what got you into researching the Kindle market and figuring out that there was data to be harvested that could give us a glimpse into the business side of writing that a lot of people are just ignorant to.
Well, my own story in publishing started probably almost 35 years ago when I did my first internship with a publishing company. I then went into a classic business corporate career. I was a business consultant in one of the big five big consulting companies of the world. Did my corporate career, consulted Fortune 500 companies, CEOs of the world, where they all shared one thing. They have a very short attention span. They want to rely on facts when they do their decisions. So my mission was always to basically shed light into problems, whether it is what book or genre shall I write, or where shall I open a new factory. It's basically, if you think of it, it's the same type of business decision, because a lot of time, money, and effort goes into whatever that decision then entails downstream.
Sure.
So for K-Lytics started about 8 years ago, and the K stands for the K in the Kindle, obviously.
Right.
And my lawyer said, don't get into a trademark dispute right on day one with with Amazon. So there goes the Indle from the Kindle. And um, basically at that point in time in my life, I had a 2-3 year old daughter at the time, and I figured, hey, traveling 7 days a week and living out of the suitcase is not the right thing. So I looked into all
Right.
sorts of at that time, passive income. That was the big buzzword of the time. I looked into many industries, and I ended up with Kindle publishing almost as a coincidence. I signed up to one of those $19 get rich with Kindle type of courses, literally.
I remember those.
And there were a lot of those during the gold digging days, and I think there never was gold there to the extent that these courses promise. But that being said, I was always a numbers person and started looking into, hey, there are sales ranks, and what does that actually mean? There is, hey, if I look into browser categories, Amazon shows me how many books there already are there. And things came to things we started looking into, and at that point I was still alone. I started experimenting with looking into what sells more, romance or mystery thriller suspense, very high level. And then people in a Facebook group say, hey, can you do that for subcategories or subgenres if you want? And then the rest is history. So today we do on almost any big genre or opportunity. Can also be small niche genres. We do 70-page reports with basically all, as you put it, heavy lifting. And by the way, Chris Fox is a very dear friend of mine. We
I
go
love
back
Chris.
together quite a while, and we've spent we know each other personally very well. And he also inspired me very much to equip his tribe, the right to market tribe, with basically saving time. So as you said, you should be focusing on the creative part, the writing.
Right.
And I know there's already enough headache with the rest of the business. So where can you make your life easier? That was the question.
What were some of the things that surprised you when you started digging in and realizing that there were trends that you could track, and there were um, certain tropes or certain items in a particular genre or subgenre that just kept coming up? What were some of the things that just surprised you about the data that you were collecting?
Well, at the very beginning, and that's like back 2014,
Yeah.
say, at that point in time, I didn't have much data to look at trends. Now, 7, 8 years later, we have, and I can share some of these longer term changes with you perhaps later in the podcast, which are very interesting. I recently presented some of those at a conference in London. Now, at that point in time, I started with this, big idea of being a nonfiction publisher, and like right on day one, I I think it hasn't changed in 8 years except for 1 month. Romance is the number one high-selling genre on Kindle, followed by mystery, thriller, suspense, followed by sci-fi and fantasy already by a margin. Although the fantasy side has helped to bring that up, and that's usually head on head with teen young adult. Seasonally you may have a little bit of children's books, although the ebook children's book market has also took a dive, and only then do you get into all these sorts of nonfiction things. And once you go into all these promises that these courses made at the time, like, hey, just upload your grandmother's paleo breakfast recipe book or your
Right.
health coach's paleo, there aren't many sales for those, or if you're into gardening or whatever. And to all those people out there who still in 2022 believe, hey, I can beef up my pension by jotting down my life's memories and memoirs, or putting all my gardening and horticulture knowledge into an ebook, that will not help you to beef up your pension. And that was one of the first big things. Fiction is the market to be in if you choose Kindle to be your primary platform of revenue. Now, that's very important because obviously a book can be a business card and a proof of authority. And there, even if you don't make many sales and you claim to be, hey, I'm the number one bestseller in maritime law reference books, perfect. But
Right.
you earn your money as a lawyer and not by selling Kindle books.
I remember I first started uh, getting into publishing around 2014. Around 2013, I had been working on a book. I had always told my wife that I had threatened to write a book for years, and I discovered around 2013 this emerging Kindle market. The Kindle device had been out for a couple of years, and to their credit, Amazon developed this tool, KDP, to allow people to publish for this new ebook platform. And before that, I remember on the internet, in the mid 2000s or so, there would be health coaches or other people that had nonfiction books, and they would sell ebooks, and it was really just a PDF file. And
It
and
was a
you could you
PDF,
could
yeah.
purchase that from a website for 30 or 40 bucks, and you had to read it on your computer screen because there was no portable device that would allow you to read books. And then Amazon, I don't know what lightning they caught in a bottle that or who came up with the Kindle, but it was genius. And then they developed this platform to allow. I guess they probably did it to have content on the Kindle to sell. I mean, I don't know
Totally.
how altruistic we can be about their intentions, but it worked out pretty well for everybody. but there was a gold rush in 20, I don't know, 2011 to about 2013, 2014, where people were just throwing up anything and becoming Kindle millionaires overnight. And we all heard those stories, but that has evened out over the years and has become a competitive market and a serious market. um, how do you think the Kindle and its prominence in the marketplace and in the industry has changed publishing? Because a lot like the music industry, when digital music really matured, the record companies were all behind and scrambled to figure out how to get their music to this new delivery mechanism. Well, the same thing has happened with publishing. The Kindle has completely changed. You might say revolutionized, or you could at least say changed the way books are delivered, the way books are bought, and the way books are marketed. How do you feel that this device and the subsequent market around this device has changed the landscape of publishing?
Well, obviously, it revolutionized it because it tore down the barriers of entry,
Right.
which right to that point were very much guarded by agents and the editors in the decision makers in traditional publishing. Now, to put things into perspective, even to the present day, by the way, it's not that this revolution has gone. To me, it's still very much in progress. Let me show you some numbers here,
Okay.
which we might find interesting. And to those listening on the podcast, I'll just put it in words. By the time that what you called gold rush had sort of ended, I think it only just begun, because back in 2014, when Amazon, up to that point, and this is why you had up to that point also so many scammers in there, you were obviously paid by the full price for a book that you sold. And if you enlisted your book with Kindle Unlimited, no matter whether it was a Kindle Unlimited or whether it's just a straight sale, at that point in time, you got the full remuneration for the book. So even if you only posted a 30-page how to do whatever type of self-help book and somebody bought it, you got whatever you charged, the $2.99, $4.99, whatever it was. That obviously changed with the Kindle Unlimited scheme and the pay by page. But if you just look at, irrespective of the mechanism of how you are paid, if you look at the total sum of money, back after the first full year of that fund was 2015, when Amazon paid out $132 million to authors worldwide who enlisted with Kindle Unlimited. So in other words, where you decided to go exclusive with your ebook with Amazon, at least for that 90-day period, and that you sign up for. And in return, they promoted your book more than probably others. But in that number, 132 million already sounds big, but that number has grown double-digit year on year. And this year, if we just take the numbers that are already in for the first 5 months of the year, now it would be 6, but based on the May numbers projected for this year, we will see another 17% growth year on year. And that fund of royalties being paid out to Kindle Unlimited authors, that will grow to more than $500 million. $500 million. Now, that is quite a big chunk of the market. So you look back on that 17% growth this year. During the pandemic, it was 25 and 12 and 19% growth year on year. Show me one industry that is already that big and still has those growth rates. And the big news in this, and this is why I really think it is a revolution, for a recent conference, we looked at 630,000 ranked book observations from 2020 to mid-year 2022. And we looked at the Kindle bestseller list, basically the top 100 in each of these main bestseller lists. So it even takes into account that not everybody writes romance, right? So if we just take the share of indies in those 30 main bestseller lists looked at over time, for 2.5 years, indies are number one in, say, market share or bestseller list share, representing now 39% of those top 100 rankings. So in other words, if you take a typical bestseller list, 39 out of 100 authors or 100 books presented will be authored by indies. Only then the next 32 books would be by Big Five, then the next 15 by Amazon imprints, which is their own publishing companies, and the rest would be other traditional publishers. So here you have the revolution, and it's not one that happened back then. It's, to my mind, one that started there and is now still in its full blossoming, if you want.
Right. And I've interviewed a number of authors who publish with Amazon's imprints, 37 North. I'm drawing a blank on their other
Thomas and Mercer,
Thomas and Mercer,
for example.
Thank you for their
Montlake for romance.
Yes, and a lot of those authors are indies that Amazon recognized as big sellers and then brought them over to their imprint. Now they've got a few big names that they've brought in, but the majority of those people are indies that just transitioned over. So you could, of that 15% that are Amazon imprints, a lot of that line is kind of blurry for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, it is a blurry line, and you're right. Sometimes they recruit big promising indies. I mean, Amazon imprints will obviously by definition do well. Although I think one cannot say that per se their rankings are favored in any way by the Amazon algorithm, but they've been doing well. Although if we look at the development over time, it's also interesting to see the Amazon imprints in terms of share between 2016 and up to 2020. They've been doing very well. And but then with the pandemic, indies basically took back some of the market share they actually lost to the Amazon imprints. So perhaps, I don't know, they did a lot of home office work as well or not doing work. Right now, indies were really the big winner of the last 2.5 years.
Wow, that's incredible. When this obviously indies are doing something right. They aren't just putting books up and people are flocking to them. I mean, that's happening some, but what we're seeing is that more and more indies are more savvy business people, and they're figuring out that there are smarter ways to write and to market books. What are some of the things? Why do you think indies are more nimble and able to keep their business strategies changing in light of the changing algorithm, changing reader taste? Why do you think that the indies are able to pivot faster?
Well, probably because they are the sole owner of their business and they don't have to go through meetings and endless debates and editorial reviews and you name it. I worked in the big corporate environment, and by the way, it was also interesting to see at one of the last conferences we had Amazon people there, and also in them, I mean, they're obviously no longer a startup. It's a big, right. I would never say bureaucratic, big GE type of company, although GE may not say that they are bureaucratic, but you get the idea. It's right. It has become a big corporate with all its processes, templates to fill business cases you have to file before investments are being made, and even with the within the decision making, where what mailing can go out to a client. I mean, corporate communication has to look at it. I mean, if you're an indie, you just you craft your message to your fans, you click send on your in your mailing application, and that's it. But apart from these, say, the business mechanics, I see the right to market thing working so well for indies, for those who are successful at it, that they marry basically 4 things. number one is a love and passion for a certain genre, right? So the ones who are really successful, they don't write, say, domestic thrillers because somebody told them it's an exciting market right now,
Right.
which it is, but they write them because they love writing thrillers and they're fascinated by whatever psychological thrillers, and all the more if it's in the confines of the, trustworthy neighborhood, which turns out not to be so trustworthy.
Right.
So a domestic, or the nanny, which turns out not to be so trustworthy, a nanny. These people, they just love what they do. Or if they write dark romance, they have a whatever love and passion for dark romance of some shape or form, or they have the passion to satisfy the sexual fantasies of those who are into dark romance. So they follow a passion. No pun intended, but in this case, it wouldn't even be a passion. The second thing they do, the really good indies, they bring the craft skills that are required to serve exactly that type of niche or subgenre, or even trope, if you want to name it this way, down on a more granular level. Why am I saying this? Yeah, because I think writing a steamy urban fantasy, urban fantasy romance scene in first person is probably much different than writing a fast-paced action scene like in The Orphans or a Jack Reacher type of book. Right. So it's different craft skills, and the successful indie brings exactly that craft skill that is required for that type of niche market to the table. The third thing, and that's also very often forgotten, one thing is craft, but the third thing I'd mention is the specific subject matter expertise. Now, some people think, but that's only relevant for nonfiction. If you write accounting books, you need to be an accountant. Yeah,
sure.
But what I mean in fiction is, of course, you don't want to write a legal thriller and compete with Mr. Grisham if you don't know the legal system.
Right.
Or my favorite example is one of our clients. She's been doing very well and has been one of the inventors of Navy SEAL romance for many, many years. Well, she had a family member who was a Navy SEAL. Now, I reckon that family member did not divulge classified information, right. But if you have a member who's a Navy SEAL, or even you served in the Army yourself, you will be much more credible to write. Now, these are the three things: love, passion, one, the craft skill, and the knowledge. The really successful authors then overlay this with where we come into the game. What is the best and most viable market where you can apply those three things and bring them to intersect with what you bring to the table? And that's where we talk about market size, market growth, level of competition, pricing trends in the genre. What are the cover cliches? If you do write shifter romance, what are the highest selling tropes? Is it, here's, for example, one example of an analysis we run every year, like trope analysis across 10,000 paranormal romance titles, and which characters are associated with the highest royalties. So in this case, it's a bit of a no-brainer at the top. Well, is it a no-brainer? I don't know. But, the shapeshifter continues to be the number one highest selling character, then followed by mate, and, shapeshifter, find your mate, the werewolf, then the alpha, then the vampire, then you have the students, only then you have the aliens, and all the way down you have the gods, the half-gods, the angels, or the elves. And then these things also change over time. So we look at, we had a big increase this year over last year in the elves and elf king type of fantasy romance entering in. So you get the idea that once you are what Chris in his Right to Market always said, let's find out that it is the shapeshifters, but it does take you some time to get to that data. And the other big trap that you mustn't fall into, I share one more picture, is I see many of authors who bring the first three things, they then do try to do their homework and they browse the Amazon bestseller lists, or browse categories, popularity lists, which are a different thing, by the way. And there is, however, one big trap associated with that, because any point in time you look at a book or what's trending on Amazon, you're presented with momentary ranks or momentary results, obviously, of the Amazon algorithm. Now, the algorithm does look at some of the historic sales, of course, but if you just look at a bestseller rank, right, it is a momentary observation. And if I look at something now here, for those who can see this as an exhibit, it's the bestseller rank of an arbitrary book. At one point in time, it shoots up all the way up in the ranks on one day from, say, sales rank nowhere, a million or so. One copy sold shoots that thing up to sales rank 400,000. And you can imagine if you're higher up the ranks, that is a bit even more drastic effect if you then sell a couple of more books. But the point is, over the next 11 days, that book goes back into oblivion where it came from if no additional sales happen. And what some authors fall for is, it was Sunday afternoon. They had time to browse the bestseller list a bit and say, oh my God, this is trending. But it's not. And in fact, you can be totally led astray. So what my mission was is basically to observe the ranks of thousands and thousands of books over time, so that you don't have to. But more importantly, that you then can put basically a meaningful average through the peaks and troughs of those sales ranks over time to then compute an average sales rank and come to a more meaningful market evaluation of what is really worth your time and effort versus what is just a one-hit wonder and you shouldn't.
I think you just answered a question for me, Alex, because one of the arguments when you start talking about market analysis and finding trends is that people will say, well, if you're writing to a trend that is popular right now, by the time you finish your book and publish it, then the trend will have moved on to something else, and you're in essence chasing the past. But what you've done is track these over time to find which ones are actually growing, which ones are just anomalies, and which ones are receding. What if someone signs up for K-Lytics? What kind of information can they get?
And performance information about book genres, subgenres, subgenres, and within those, partly even down to the trope level. To give you some illustrations, and before we go into the specific data of K-Lytics, you can already get pretty far, by the way, with Google Trends as a tool, which is totally free. And let me just show you one picture there, which for me totally crushes that argument that I'm too slow at writing and I'm too slow for the trend. 15-year evolution of the search interest for vampire romance versus paranormal romance versus fantasy romance versus dark. I mean, after Twilight, vampire romance was basically a thing from 2008 all the way into the mid 2012, 2015. It triggered a more general paranormal romance wave, which all the way from 2010 went into, and then very recently you have this evolution over the last 2 years of fantasy romance, of dark romance, within those the tropes of billionaire romance, mafia romance, you name it. Now all these things, you see, they sometimes they even evolve like overnight, like with the 50 Shades of Grey blockbuster for a billionaire romance, which lasts to the present day. And we've just published our billionaire romance research, which basically shows, I personally thought, hey, that must be dead. 50 Shades, any money with that. Well, the fact is, while the greats of money is built whole billionaire romance series around it, and they earn money with it year in, year out, catering for an audience who's just totally into these types of books. So you can get already pretty far with, you know, the tools in the public. The starting point where we started out is basically two things. The one is looking about making choices around, say, all these 8,000 Amazon sales rank, which is a measure of, okay, how much do these types of books sell, and they come with a certain number of books as one measure of competition that you'd be surprisingly trending. Very high average sales rank across the top 20 title, averaged out over time. Domestic thrillers, which we just researched, had sales ranks on average, you know, well in the top 1,000, currently even more to the, I think, 500 mark, which is very high up in the store out of, say, 8 million books. But there are still only less than, currently around 1,000 titles in the category. Take something like the Jack Reachers of the world, Vigilante Justice. Also, well, there the sales rank is a little lower, fair enough, but it's still around, you know, a specific audience, and the books typically very high up there. But also here, the book supply is, given we have more than 8 million book titles on Kindle, there are still only around 2,000 to 3,000 titles in the very category. Or you decide as a writer, I go for something which is way more popular, which, for example, given the demographics of the typical Kindle owner, is cozy mystery. So say the older woman who reads cozy mystery, although there's a younger audience in witch cozy mystery and paranormal cozy mystery. But having said this, this has grown into a big but fruitful mainstream market. So it is about making these choices of, do I want to serve a niche market? Do I want to go mainstream? But if you do so, being very conscious about what is the market potential in relation to the level of competition. And that is basically data for all the 8,000 categories that we track every month. And the other thing is then to start looking at things over time, you know, to really understand, in this example here, over the last 7 years. So how did clean and wholesome romance perform versus erotica? And you'd be amazed if you can see this picture here. You can't see it in the podcast, but, you know, clean and wholesome romance came out of nowhere. Well, it always existed as a trope, but not on Amazon Kindle as a category. So that was introduced back 2015. It had a stellar growth, while erotica was basically heavily restricted by the advertising. Now with a pay-to-play type of mode on Amazon, where you have to pay and advertise to rise up in the ranks, unless you have a newsletter list of 20,000 people or more, you have to drive traffic to your page. Now, erotica titles were heavily restricted both on Facebook or on BookBab or on Amazon advertising due to the adult content. But here comes TikTok, and all of a sudden you have the erotica category shooting back up. And so there is something around understanding how things evolve over time, to understand that when people wanted escapist reads during the pandemic, that epic fantasy, also fueled by all those investments that an Amazon made into Wheels of Time or Netflix into The Witcher, you name it, although that's probably more urban. But all these investments by the big streaming companies, combined with something which is there as a trend overall, you know, that got up, but The Walking Dead were dead, dystopian took a dive. So the second thing we provide is to have this trend view that you know what is happening and that you look at these things before you commit your time and money. And then once the book is written, it's for many people, it gets very tactical about the market. So we now could look into many examples, pricing data. What people usually can relate with a lot is, well, what are the selling covers in my genre? And here, while I think there are many who've realized that there's something like cover cliches that sell by genre, we basically take it to the next level, because we then really look at the market share in specific genres of specific cover types. So if you are into, say, romantic comedy, we take it then a level further and say, okay, out of the romantic comedy market, 41% of the market is a flat vector graphic, which might remind you of Cozy Mystery on First Sight, but it is comedy. 31% is the sexy guy. And only then you have the girl, the romantic couple, the sexy couple, or Mr. Handsome in a suit on your cover. And once you know that, I think you should immediately get to know, there is. So I do the writing. I can already orient my writing catering for trends and for specific market potential before I even pick up the pen. And even while you're writing something, you can look at, well, what are the high selling characters or locations? I can still adapt as I write. And once you wrote the book, you know that tedious marketing part comes. And there we just want to make your life easier by providing you with the facts that take a lot of discussions out of the game. So why have a discussion about a cover design with a friend or relative who can't help you anyway about which they like most, or with a cover designer who's just a cover designer? But if you put in your brief, this is what I want to have because that represents the highest market share, then that can make life a lot easier, so that you can focus more on your writing. And perhaps my last word on that one would be, when I sometimes ask people, well, what did you do with the data, or what did you find valuable? And of course, there's many mechanical things, but I was astonished by two types of feedback. One is, Alex, thank God you told me, because I was just to embark on a 3-year journey for this big series I planned.
Yes.
Where I now realize there is zero potential whatsoever. Well, not zero, but it's just the odds of success are so minute compared to these other projects I could do. So that's one feedback, telling people what not to write. And the other thing is, other feedback which astonished me was where people said, hey, what your data showed was sort of, I had a hunch, or, people were also talking about it in a Facebook group, but now I have the facts and I write so much faster. I market so much better because I do it with so much more confidence, because I know what I'm doing is right on track with what the market wants.
Alex, I emailed you over a month ago when we started talking, and you asked what genre I was currently writing in, and my wife and I are writing a cozy mystery series. And you said, "Well, let me send you a report to kind of get an idea of what we do." And so you sent me the cozy mystery report, and with the accompanying video kind of explanation where you walk through all the data, and my mind was blown. And I suddenly realized that there are so many. While I already had a story idea in mind and it's something I was working on, you showed me exactly what things I needed to focus more heavily on in the story, and I even adjusted a couple of the storylines to make sure that I was hitting the things that readers really resonate with. And I think when you start talking about market trends and studying those things, a lot of new writers immediately kind of throw their hands up. No, I'm an artist. I write what's in my heart, and it comes out. And if I tell a story with enough truth, it will find an audience. Maybe, maybe it will. But if you can understand your audience ahead of time, and not we're not saying to change your story just to pander to an audience. I guess that's my question. What's the difference in understanding your market, writing to that market, and just pandering for hitting a checklist so that you can cash in?
Yeah, I mean, understanding the market is just if you stay at the theory level. So you've looked at the market data, but you don't take action on it, right? So the
Right.
next level would be you take the market data and you make them some directional decision making with it. Now, I think what I said before is the important thing is that right to market or taking then that data. And by the way, I really appreciate your feedback on the report I sent you, because it shows me it is not just a commercial thing, it is a creative thing as well,
Right.
right? You let your creative side be informed, inspired, perhaps even changed, adapted by what you see happening in the market. And this for me has nothing to do with that some people confuse right to market with. It's not about being a contortionist and having to bend yourself, oh, I am an artist, of course, if you're an artist who says I don't have to pay any bill, or my husband is paying for the bills, or my wife for that matter, and if you're a lucky husband, and so if you can be like completely free floating in your artistic world, then yeah, why didn't you write a book about for the Amazon category, reference books, literary fiction, criticisms, and and make the work of art, if in this nonfiction area, or you write a biography about whatever, um, uh, great gardeners of China in the 15th century. That may be a big project in a super artistic world, but there's just no market for it. So, but if you say, well, I'm a thriller writer, and you go about it in a professional way, you would, of course, look, okay, there are many types of thrillers, but how do political thrillers fare versus financial thrillers versus vigilante justice thrillers versus whatever classic spy novels, you name it? There is an answer to that. And once you know that, I think it is really not about having just a checklist. It is a checklist with intention and a bit of inspiration. So I'm saying, it shouldn't be, it should never be a mechanical thing, because I know you're artists. I'm an artist too. I play the guitar, and I always keep saying, look, Mozart not necessarily only wrote what he had in mind as an artist. He had to pay his bills, and we know towards the end of his life he wasn't very successful at it anymore, because he was probably too much in sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But there was a point in time where basically, oh, okay, the Lord pays, so this is what I compose. Leonardo da Vinci, also him, there was a lot of commissioned work, so they had to look into the tastes of the audience. And what I like about these examples, like Leonardo da Vinci or Bach as a composer, there was a lot of maths going into the work of art. So I just personally believe, where you almost like the old Greek, they had the gymnasium for the bodily things, and they had the museum, for the muses. So more, whatever it was, history or poetry. They had to study both things, the mechanical world, as well as the arts. And people and pupils at that time, students at that time, were very versatile, because they had this holistic approach to the arts and the world, and the worlds and the arts. And I think commerce is part of the world, as are the arts. And once you combine these perspectives, I think great things can happen. So, a little bit of numbers combined with the writings can make much of the difference. There's no guarantee for success, but you can increase the odds of success. Let's put it this way.
Well, I have a daughter who is a professional artist, and um, does she paints, she does digital artwork. Um, she has a number of mediums that she works in. But if you walk into her art studio, she has a rack of paints, and they are ones that she has chosen because she knows that these particular supplies work best for what she's doing and for what her customers are going to want. And she
There you
doesn't
go.
just wander around the house looking for liquids that she can throw on a canvas. She has very specific tools that she uses, and she's identified those over, the years that she's worked in her industry. And but when we talk about writing, we want to just say that we're just we just show up and the muse speaks, and we're just mediums that just let it flow, and no other artist works that way. It's funny.
Yeah, and it's then even down to these questions. Talking of artists, I had here this picture of Laurence Olivier in Hamlet, 1948. With a famous scene with a skull, to be or not to be. Now,
Right.
today, as an author, you may say, Kindle Unlimited or not Kindle Unlimited? That is the question. Shall I go wide or shall I go into KU? And, there's even answers to those that, yeah, let's look at the numbers for your genre. Overall, the fact of the matter is that the market share in the rankings of Kindle Unlimited title has grown from 44% in 2016 to 50% in the year 2022. And by the way, it shrunk again a bit between 2019 and 2022. So there seems to be a market at equilibrium. So you have to go down to the next level and say, well, what is the case in my genre? And, if you write whatever dark fantasy romance, the answer may be Kindle Unlimited. If you're into biographies and memoirs, it could clearly be a wide story. Get the idea. Now, I know on that very topic, there are 15 other things to consider, but there is market information to inform your decisions, to not just have the completely, to be or not to be type of pondering for your arts.
Alex, as we sit here in, just past the midpoint of 2022, the Kindle publishing industry especially has matured, and it is lots of people have created careers on writing and publishing on KDP and for the Kindle specifically. Um, how do you see the future? We've got 8-10 years of historical data now that definitely inform where we are right now. But how do you see the future? And for people looking to get in, we think, wow, you're late to the game if you're just getting into publishing now, but not really. But where do you see the potential for new people coming in, and how do you see the health of this industry in general?
Also here, I would always try to look at the facts of the market data. So when we do a typical genre research, so you mentioned cozy mystery, and let's take cozy mystery as an example. You may remember from that very report that we publish and update every year, we have a list of high-ranking authors in there. And now that we've done the research for 4 years and more, we mark which of these authors who now in the year 2022 are in the top 40 have been there in the previous year, in the years before, and you clearly have two types of authors. You have those there who've been in the cozy mystery lead list 4 years in a row, the big hitting names. But genre by genre, as I go through, I think you always have between 30 to sometimes 60% of new authors, new kids on the block, or authors on the block, that have made it in there. Now, why did they make it in there? As I see in many of them, well, there may be one-hit wonders, there may be the bit of luck, but if you look at this list of newbie authors, or sometimes they are very mature authors, knowledgeable authors, experienced authors, but they really then doubled down on a certain genre or niche market and said, okay, what do I have to do? So there is always opportunities. We always see, say, at least half of the authors who are in the top ranks this year have not been there in the years before. But if you look at what they did, you can, for the vast majority of these, you can clearly see by the covers, by their titles, by their book descriptions, they've done their homework. They have done the research. They have looked at how they can apply their craft to the market and marketing required in that specific genre. So my outlook, number one, would very clearly be for individual authors. It's never too late, as it will never be too late in any arts, in any point in time in the history and future of this planet, right? We are creative beings. There will always be creativity, and it will always find a channel. And I think if I look at the last couple of thousand years, and specifically ever since the printed books we have since, when was it? Good old Gutenberg, 1400 something, 1500 something, actually. We will have books for a considerable time to come. It's not too late. Specifically, Amazon Kindle publishing, I'm a strong believer, coming from the corporate world, that although I know many people don't like it, the biggest tend to become bigger. And so Amazon and Amazon Kindle is a power that may not go away. Will the books always be read on a Kindle device? Certainly no. I think they have many reads right now also on the Kindle app, and there will always be new channels. But I think you can rest assured that if there are new channels, it's either a complete new revolution, or you can be sure that then the established players like an Amazon, like other big names, will make sure that they invest in the channel or the new format, whatever it will be. If it will be 3D interactive holograph type of books in 20 years from now, if you're in the game now, you may be then as well.
Well, and I know, Alex, if there is a new trend coming and a new a new piece of technology that's going to revolutionize the industry once again, your ear is to the ground, and you will let us know when those things come up.
Knock on wood, I'll try my best.
Alex, if people are just learning about this concept of right to market, and about market research, and about K-Lytics specifically, where can they find out more? This is going to take a lot of people by surprise, and hopefully in a good way. Where can they find you, and sign up for all the great stuff that you do?
Well, first of all, you can always get the feet wet with things we offer for free. Our website is K-Lytics.com, which is K-Lytics, like in analytics.com. And then at /free-report, you can download a free report. We do a bi-monthly trend reporting, which you can sign up for free. By the way, it's not listed here on this page, but if you type in K-Lytics.com/Christmas, although it's summer now, it's always good to prepare in summer for winter if you're a writer.
Right. Absolutely.
There we have, by the way, a report on Christmas romance, and I think, even if you're not in the genre, it gives you a full example of how these genre reports look like. If you want to have access to the full database and all the reports we do, there is K-Lytics.com/booster, which is just a special deal we have here for this interview. And go check out the site, the blog, and Google us. You will find us in various Facebook groups, but the main point is the site. And if you just want to have not a membership but a report a la carte, there's also K-Lytics.com/shop, where you can get a genre report a la carte.
Alex, thank you so much for joining us today in the Storycraft Cafe. You've opened my mind, and I know that a lot of our members are going to be really excited about this information.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye, everybody.